Good morning. We are here today to discuss Parshiyos Bahar B'chukosai. Parshiyos Bahar B'chukosai signifies the end of Sefer Vayikra, the third volume of the Torah, which probably we'll touch on a little bit. We're not too far away from Shavuos, so it might be an auspicious time to talk about that topic, the end of Sefer Vayikra as well. As we know, every year we read Parshas B'midbar just prior to Shavuos. This month, the month of Iyar, was sponsored by the Slomiansky family in loving memory of Daniel ben Aryeh Yaakov Halevi Zichrono Livracha. We wish the neshama to have an aliyah. May our learning be in the merits for an aliyah's neshama for him. May the family have comfort, and may all people suffering have comfort. This week's class is also dedicated to all members of K'lal Yisrael suffering pain and hardships, as well as for the merit of a Refu'ah Sh'leima for Yisroel Ben Rochel, Meir ben Ruth, Chaim Yitzchak ben Chaya B'racha, Yidel Ben Rochel, Moshe David ben Rochel, Sonayela Basya Yehudis Rus, Levi Yitzchok Isaac ben Orah Yutel, and Avraham Shmuel ben Kreindle Yehudit. We wish everyone to feel better and have a Refu'ah Sh'leima very, very quickly. At some point in our lives, we have almost definitely experienced feeling out of place. And thus the title for today's shir in Parshiyos Bahar B'chukosai, the title is Finding Where We Belong. So all of us have experienced some, at one point or another, feeling out of place. Whether entering a new school, a new team, a new job, or a new community, etc., the ability to find one's place is generally seen as an essential component in order to succeed and survive, and indeed, many choices of where a person will reside, or what job they will take, or if they will join a company or team, depend specifically on can they find their place. Most of us have probably experienced different time frames of this adjustment period, as well as different levels of ease or difficulty in realizing a comfortability and a feeling of true belonging. So here's an overview on the concept of belonging versus feeling out of place. Feeling that we belong is deeply important to human beings because belonging is a core psychological need, just like food or shelter. It's not just it would be nice to have a feeling of belonging. It's essential to our emotional and mental well-being. This is, by the way, research easily found if you do a search on the internet. Why belonging matters. Number one, evolutionary roots. Humans are social creatures. For most of our evolutionary history, survival depended on being part of a group. Belonging meant protection, access to resources, and support. Rejection or exclusion was dangerous or even deadly, and our brains are still hardwired that way. Number two, mental health. A sense of belonging protects against things like, anxiety, depression, and loneliness. When we feel like we matter to a group or a community, we experience greater self-worth and emotional stability. Number three, identity and meaning. Besides helping us shape who we are, whether through family, friends, culture, religion, or work, feeling connected to others gives life context, purpose, and shared meaning. And finally, motivation and performance is number four. When people feel they belong in a classroom, workplace, social setting, they're more engaged, creative, and willing to contribute. And this drives resilience and persistence, which are, by the way, key buzzwords in the world of education today. So common reasons why we feel we belong are like shared values or interests, or being seen and accepted when others acknowledge, accept, and value us, or we do that for others. Consistent inclusion. There's a cultural or a social fit where we are aligned with the norms, the language, and the behaviors of a group, and emotional safety, trusting that it's safe to be vulnerable or honest with others. So all of that is on the need to feel like we belong. Now, when we find our place, the common reasons we feel out of place, we feel judged or misunderstood. Social exclusion or invisibility. Somehow we're just not seen, or we're completely left out, even in small ways or obviously big ways. Different values or backgrounds. You might have very different cultural, religious, or ideological differences, or if we lack a shared language or behavior. And there's also something called the internal self-doubt or imposter syndrome. even in welcoming spaces, if we're personally insecure or we have past baggage like rejection and things like that, we can also feel like we don't belong, even if we're being welcomed. Bottom line is belonging just isn't just about being in a group, it's about being accepted, valued, and connected. If you're wrestling with belonging, that's completely human, and often it's worth exploring why and what to do that will help you feel most authentically seen and safe. Now, this is all, I think, resonating probably true in almost all of it for most of us, but I contend that on top of all this, one of the major problems facing our global society is the existential loneliness, where people really feel like they don't have a place. They really do feel loneliness, alone. And this has been happening for so many people for so many decades over the last century. The result of this is what I like to call the global pandemic of loneliness. And in fact, in 2020, when I was asked to give an anti-Semitism speech for Oxford, I did it online, and I called it The Loneliness Pandemic and the Human Capacity for Cruelty and Emotion. I proved that way back in the early 2000s, the Surgeon General of the United States considered loneliness to be the biggest health threat to American society. Now, all of this widespread global pandemic of loneliness has given rise to people's desperate search for attachment and ultimately becoming part of dangerous ideological movements, simply so that they can find connection, ultimately a feeling of belonging. So this is incredibly, incredibly important and truly, truly dangerous. People become attached to unhealthy ideologies and social groups, especially online, so that they can feel like they belong to that famous word today called community. And there are huge amounts of dangers involved in that. The NCRI, my dear friend, Dr. Reb Joel Finkelstein, has done a lot of research on that with his team. We're not going to get into that heavily today, but let me give you a simple example that we're all going to relate to in our age bracket, if you don't mind my saying so, as many of us are no longer so young. We know this thing called gangs, 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. Gangs are exactly that. It's a social grouping where people feel a sense of belonging and purpose, generally protected by an overarching leader who tells you that this is the right thing to do and don't feel bad about it. This is good, this is correct. And people buy in because they need to belong to a group. Now, I'm not saying it's not a little more complex than that, but that's a huge part of it. So this is really, really important to understand, that not belonging can yield incredibly bad things. For those of us that are Jewish, we are definitely the victims of this happening in terms of the rising tide of anti-Semitism across the world. Today, we are going to discuss our global Jewish community and the ways that we have both failed and succeeded at solving our loneliness pandemic, and how we can do even better in the near future with the help of Hashem. In Parshiyos Bahar B'chukosai, we have two different sentences that share phrases and contexts that are also quite similar. And I never realized this question until today, and I kind of thought to myself, wow, this is kind of an obvious question. Maybe it was at the back of my brain somewhere, but I don't think I ever really focused on it and realized the difficulty of it. In these two Parshiyos, here's the similar context and the similar phrasing. Both Parshas Bahar and Parshas B'chukosai separately talk about the Jewish people's dwelling securely in their land. And the context is that there will be an abundance of food, there will be great satiation, everybody will have plenty, there will be a true blessing, and that the Jewish people will dwell securely in their land. So in Parshas Bahar, chapter 25, sentence 18, the Torah says, "You shall observe my laws and faithfully keep my rules, that you may live upon the land in security." Separately, in Parshas B'chukosai, chapter 26, verse 5, the Torah says, "Your threshing shall overtake the vintage, and your vintage shall overtake the sowing," which means the new crops will overtake the older crops. "You shall eat your fill of bread and dwell securely in your land. Dwell securely in your land. So both of these passages, these phrases, appear in paragraphs that discuss the plentiful and satisfying bounty that the Jewish people may merit to experience in Eretz Yisrael. Both of these contexts and paragraphs. In both cases, the blessings of physical abundance is accompanied with the promise to dwell securely in the land. Now, in Parshas Bahar, the overall context, the frame, if you will, of this blessing is that all of this will come with the proper observance of the sabbatical years, what we call Shemitah, and Jubilee years, that which we call Yovel. That's the context. And in Parshas Bahar, the context of this blessing is that when we observe the laws of Shemitah and Yovel, that's when we get all this physical abundance and blessing, etc., including dwelling securely in the land. In Parshas Bechukosai, the context of this blessing will come with properly toiling, working hard to study and keep the Torah. That's the way the rabbis understand the opening sentence in Parshas Bechukosai, which says, "In Bechukosai telechu," if you will walk in my statutes, say the rabbis, that refers to laboring really hard in the study of Torah and keeping the commandments. And then the Torah goes on to say the phrase that I mentioned before, where all the crops will overtake each other, you'll eat bread to satiety, and you will dwell securely in the land. Okay, so here's the obvious question. For which set of observances do we, the Jewish people, merit these physical abundance blessings with the meticulous observance of Shabbos, of Shemitah and Jubilee years, or with intensive Torah study and general Torah observance? Which is it? I simply don't understand. If you're going to tell me it's the Shemitah and the Yovel, so then why do we have this concept of toiling hard and keeping the Torah as a sort of more intensive general requirement in order to get these blessings? And if it's only for that, so then we're not getting it for the Shemitah and the Jubilee for those specific set of rules. So why mention it over there at all? It's actually a pretty hard question, I realized. Okay, now in addition to that overall question, I want to point out that there are some incredibly novel concepts introduced in Parshas Bahar that involve property ownership of real estate that seemingly have never existed, practically never existed in almost any society in the world other than Judaism. And despite the adoption of countless civil laws and ethical teachings taught in the Torah by most of the civilized world, here are a few examples that no other society has ever imitated or really kept. And here they are. Number one, ancestral land, right? Land that we inherit cannot be sold if we want to forever. In Eretz Yisrael, a person who inherits land from their ancestors can only sell that land until the Jubilee year. Unique law. Number two, all the lands in the same exact year shall not be worked in any fashion whatsoever, what we call Shemitah. Unique law. Charging interest on monetary loans is prohibited. It's completely prohibited to charge interest on monetary loans. Again, some people may have practiced that for a while, didn't hold up. And for sure, they did many, many workarounds. Number four, openly charging more than an item is worth is prohibited. Now, there is something called price gouging, but for the most part, unless it's extreme or a dire need, if you bought it, too bad. You paid for it, that's the way it is. Now, specifically, also, this restriction in the Torah is not referring to overcharging when a consumer might be desperate due to a temporary shortage, right? So it's just a general rule, not allowed to overcharge. And number five, that if a person sells himself into slavery or sells ancestral land, a relative ought to redeem him or his property. That's also not an obligation that other societies have adopted. So it's interesting to try to understand why these things are actually structured this way, why we have these rules, and also that they're kind of very separate topics from each other, but they're all here in Parshas Bahar. So most of us think of Parshas Bahar as discussing the Jubilee and the Shemitah year and the 7-year cycles of Eretz Yisrael. But in addition to that, we have don't overcharge, we have don't charge interest, we have redeeming a person if he sold himself into slavery. We also have, parenthetically, an obligation not to be mean to people, not to say not nice things to people. Okay, so I would like to suggest that the Torah is teaching us here a very incredibly important concept, and that the Torah is really outlining for us a profound methodology to assist people in finding financial and emotional security and long-term stability. Things I know that would be very useful for us and for the world. Let me begin by sharing with you a Midrash Tanchuma at the beginning of this Parsha, Parshas Bahar. We'll just do a little bit, I'll do a kind of a smattering of it so you get the general idea. So the Midrash opens with the obligation to not cheat anyone and to be careful to only sell for the amount of years that it's possible to sell if he's selling land. And so it brings a sentence from Proverbs 28:22. An evil man is desperate for wealth, and a man who has like a either evil or an evil eye, and he does not know that deficiency is on its way. Meaning a person who's desperate to fill his eye or himself with wealth does not understand that he's actually shortly going to experience loss. So the Midrash actually brings two examples. One is Cain. Cain wanted to inherit the whole world. We're not going to go into the whole thing about Cain, but the word Cain means koneh, which means to acquire. We've spoken about this in the past. He's looking to be the ruler in charge of owning this world. And he doesn't realize that in the end, he's going to be completely deficient, and he ends up becoming a wanderer who has to move about the whole world, not to mention that he doesn't leave any posterity either. Another example is Ephron the Hittite. When Avraham wanted to buy the land, Ephron said to give me money, and Ephron was kind of overcome with his desire for that money. And even though he, let's say, originally had been willing to give it away or to be nice about it, he ends up charging the top dollar, and that's why he loses a letter in his name. Instead of spelling Ephron with a vav, when it comes to the time in the Torah where he accepts the money, he ends up losing a part of his name, and the vav is gone. That's the Midrash at the beginning of Parshas Tanchuma, and maybe we'll get a little bit more into those examples, maybe not, but the point that we want to take away from that is that what the Midrash is opening on Parshas Bahar is that people have a tendency to seek security and stability by establishing economic success and fortune. And that's many people's answer to how to deal with anxiety, is to get money. Because when I get money, I don't need to be anxious. I can control everything I need to control. I can buy whatever I need to buy. I can go wherever I need to go. All of the things that people associate with lots of money. And what the Midrash is telling us, based on Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei, is that when a person motivates themselves in that direction, they don't realize it, but actually what's going to happen is the opposite. They are actually going to become deficient. They're going to become lacking, like Cain and like Ephron. So there is a huge tendency for people to exploit other people, to do lots of illegal things in order to gain this emotional security, this physical security, which gives them emotional security because now they feel better. And that's a tendency of a lot of people, unfortunately. So what Parshas Bahar teaches us is the matrix of a society, not a person, of a society, of a whole group of people that are committed to making sure that all of its citizens are able to own land and property. That includes, by the way, the tribe of Levi, who also got cities in the land of Israel. And they're able to own it in perpetuity. It cannot be taken away from them, ultimately. Furthermore, the outline of the Torah allows for people's fortunes to wax and wane by structuring safeguards that ensure assistance, fairness, right? What do I mean by assistance? We have to help people that are faltering, the Torah tells us in Parshas Bahar. We have to be careful to lend money and lend money without interest. We can't cheat people. We can't be mean to people. We need to be nice to people. You know why? Because we need to ensure that everybody has the wherewithal for financial success and stability. And furthermore, there's a waning that happens. Unfortunately, sometimes people's fortunes go awry and they need help. They might even sell themselves into slavery. They need to be redeemed. And ultimately, there's a reset button. If they needed to sell themselves or their ancestral land for a period of time, it gets redeemed in the Yovel year. And everything goes back to the rightful ownership. So that's what the Torah is doing in Parshas Bahar. Says the Torah, if you do that, so what you're ensuring is that people don't actually need to resort to treasure hunting and finding their fortune and exploiting other people and making it the total sure way to get their security through money, because there's a society built around fairness and the ability for people to buy and sell, and for the ability for people to even go up and down in their fortunes, and ultimately everything to be reconstituted to a proper basis where people can have land and an ability to earn, etc. Now, that's wonderful, and it works. But guess what? If that's all you have, in other words, if you have a society of people that are committed to this kind of what I like to call social capitalism, right? A balance between socialism and capitalism, where ultimately we're supposed to and allowed to make money and have businesses, but at the same time try to retain a baseline of some equality, that doesn't really compensate for the human tendency to lust for money, to lust for power, to want to gain as much security as they can through money. And what will happen is that even though society, if they keep the laws of Shemitah and Yovel, deserves an abundance of produce and blessing, that even the blessing is so profound that the food itself becomes more nutritious and it lasts longer in the body. These are explicit comments to our Parsha. Even if all that is happening, you're still going to have people with, let's just call it, Cain and Ephron syndrome. They're still going to be captivated by large amounts of money, by wanting to take advantage perhaps of other people. The only solution to that is for a person to find their own value and worth, and to understand their role in this world, and to make sure that they are working really hard to fulfill their existential purpose as a human being. It's not enough that a person has land. It's not enough that a person has a business. It's not enough that they live in a society that is committed to protecting that. In order to prevent people from going off the rails and becoming money hungry and putting money above so many other things in their life, we've spoken about this many times, such as, people who sacrifice their family time and family life for more money, telling themselves that this is what I need to do in order to support my family. There's so many examples where, people overspend because of status, and they feel the need because they need to also be seen a certain way so that they can also make money, etc. All of this is very dangerous and fertile ground for a person to suffer from Cain and Ephron syndrome. The only answer to really ensure that a person will feel good about themselves and will feel that they actually belong, even in a society that's trying to give them a place, both land and economics, is if a person works hard to study the Torah so that they know how to apply it to their lives, and thereby they find their way in this world to living their purpose, obviously through the toil of Torah study and through the observance of the commandments of the Torah. And the Torah is telling us that it's true that you merit blessing for the societal commitment to this kind of equity, to this kind of being able to be fair to all members of society. But beyond that, what's necessary is for a person to really become motivated deeply by who they are, knowing their own value, knowing their own contribution, and that can only happen through serious Torah study and Torah observance. And then the sky is the limit, meaning there's more bounty and there's even more miraculous things that happen, as the rabbis tell us. I'm not going to go into them, but some that are very clear. No nations will attack us. Wild animals will stop being wild, or will be in the land. We'll be very successful at vanquishing our enemies. That's the ultimate of when a person has actually gained their own internal security and emotional long-term stability. And that only happens through tremendously hard Torah study and then applying it to the observances of the Torah. That's where a person gets true, deep, calm, and meaning and purpose in their lives. And that's when a person will feel totally comfortable. Now, the two together are also necessary, because if a person is finding that kind of personal security and purpose in life, but they do not function as part of a society that's also looking to do that for one another, that's not nearly good enough. We need that overall societal structure and community. And Baruch Hashem, that's the way, Torah and Jewish communities have been built for throughout the millennia, including in the diaspora, which is why real estate in a Torah observant community just always seems, almost always to attract more people, and everything seems to, go up in value. And the better the infrastructure, the more people come, and the more people grow together, and there's a much larger economic basis for security, even financially as well. Now, the proof that this is true is because the end of Parshas Bechukosai, meaning the proof that it's true, that in order for the person to truly manage to accomplish this kind of security and this kind of belonging, is that you need both components, is because the Torah tells us very clearly that the way that it unravels, right? In other words, we were successful in Eretz Yisrael for many hundreds of years to establish this kind of meaning, purpose, and societal fairness. We managed to be in Eretz Yisrael at the Beis HaMikdash for 420 years, before it was 410 years initially, before the first one was destroyed. The only way that we are able to accomplish is because we did those things. But the way that it unravels, it starts with stopping to study the Torah. And if you want to see that explicitly, it's a Rashi in Parshas Bechukosai, where he then ticks off the 7 steps that bring us ultimately to exile. So what happens is we start by not studying, and then we continue that by not performing. And then eventually we get kicked out. And that's when the Shemitah cycles that we didn't keep, that's when they will become properly kind of paid for as a punishment through our exile. And that Rashi is, chapter 26, sentence 14. Yeah, that's the beginning of where Rashi begins to outline it, and then he continues. It's a long comment in the Rashi, but that's where it is. And so the point is that, of course, you need both, but the way that it really works well is you have a society that's committed to the general, and then you have individuals who work on themselves personally and their own specific mission and purpose, and that is how a person will find where they truly belong. And then the sky is the limit. You get the most unbelievable blessings. But if, God forbid, we stop listening to the words of the Torah, and by that we mean the way the Torah specifically applies to us personally, and how we apply it in our own lives, and the purpose and the meaning that we personally serve in this world. So that's the beginning of the unraveling of everything else. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that we're going to talk a little bit about, our global Jewish community and how we've succeeded and how we failed. So in many regards, Torah society is very robustly succeeding. In many communities, there has been a tremendous amount of growth, both the population and economic success. And it has been true a lot of times that Jews do business with each other, go into business together. And thank God there's a lot of flourishing. And by flourishing, I don't only mean economically, I mean socially, right? We have, Baruch Hashem, many schools that opened. We have many chesed organizations that open. We have great things that kind of blossom out from the society that is living together and committed to treating each other correctly. And Baruch Hashem, we also have much Torah study that is happening. At the same time, do we really properly support the global Jewish community, our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, right? Even local communities are often splintered, where it's this section and that section and the other section, and there really isn't a commonality of working together. There really isn't that shared identity that there ought to be. And that, I do think, is something that we need to work on much more. And I would suggest that part of the reason that it's not happening as well as it should is because we are suffering from a more serious toiling in the Torah study, and we are suffering from not really buying in to what our existential purpose is. And we are, on some levels, and even in the Jewish religious world, suffering from money as the answer rather than meaning and purpose and toiling hard in Torah study and observance as the answer. And that's something that the Torah is warning us very, very clearly here in Parshas B'chukosai, that everything can unravel, from what we have in Eretz Yisrael, chas v'shalom, to whatever we have here in the diaspora, chas v'shalom. We have to understand that there's so much work to be done to really merit the blessings that the Torah speaks about, both from the point of view of having society committed to trying to help everyone in that society have security financially and assist whatever is needed, and from the perspective of people truly laboring in Torah study and properly applying it and finding their own right place in the world. And so I think that something we should all probably really consider is just asking ourselves the simple question: when we are driven to find more money or to find more income, is that really the focus that we should have? Should we be instead asking the question, what is the healthy, good purpose that I serve, and how can I fulfill that? Right? So to be clear, obviously everybody needs to figure out a way to make ends meet. And obviously working on bitachon and things like that are also very important and useful. But in addition to finding a way to make ends meet, we have to equally and more importantly find a way to make ourselves belong. And the way that we really make ourselves belong is by figuring out what our unique contribution is and making sure that we're doing that. And that can really only come with serious Torah study. So there's the general, right? Like I'm doing this mission or I'm doing that mission. And then there's the specific. I need to study Torah more. So I do my relationship at home better with my spouse and my children, so that I do my relationships with my community better, with my friends and other members, right? So there's constant need to learn more so that we can do everything that we think we're supposed to be doing even better. And then we can also find more ways that we can contribute and find meaning and purpose as well. And hopefully by doing all this, we actually then will merit the blessings that the Torah is talking about. So our question was, why do we have two completely different descriptions of why the blessings for physical sustenance and bounty come? And the answer is because one is that we need to live in a society that's committed to these ideals as a whole, as a social grouping and community. And the other is because as individuals, we absolutely have to find who we are based on careful Torah study and application. And then we get even a greater level of physical blessing. And more importantly, then it becomes enduring and long-lasting. Because if we don't have that second component where a person is working on themselves to truly know their meaning and purpose, it's extremely likely that we will suffer from Cain and Ephron syndrome, and that is a terrible disease. And I think many of us know that it is a disease that has afflicted our communities in various ways, whether it's the amount of money that people spend on weddings, or what people consider to be an actual vacation, or what people now consider to be the basic level of gashmias on which they need to live. It's a super, super high standard, and we might not be pursuing the correct ideals. So hopefully we can reverse that trend, and we can also gain a much stronger sense of communal oneness, even if we live in very different places, and including different countries and continents. And we need to do that, because for those of us who think that Nebuch, these soldiers that are now dying among our fellow Jews, that somehow is not one step removed from me, it's 3 steps, or it's 4 steps, or it's 5 steps, that's a terrible failing of us understanding the oneness of our society. And that's a problem, because we really have to understand how we are really one Jewish community that needs to work tirelessly for the safety and security of everyone else, not just the Jews that are on the front lines. God willing, we should, really take this to heart and understand that that's where the blessing is, understand that we need to find our unique contribution and purpose, and take responsibility for each other as a whole. Okay, questions or comments? There are a few things that were posted here. Somebody did ask if you can give away your... Oh, thank you, Oda. Thank you. If you can give away your ancestral land in contrast to selling, yeah, probably you can. However, not really recommended, but nonetheless, what we're really trying to do is protect the society from kind of fooling themselves into thinking that they can sell it. And the Torah is letting us here know that when it comes to business, we have to be careful to protect the sellers. So the rabbis basically talk about, as a general rule, that sellers are unhappy and buyers are happy. That's the general rule. And the reason is because nobody really wants to feel like they need to part with their assets. Now, of course, there can be certain selling that's not really in that category, but for the most part, that's the general rule. So the Torah is ensuring that even when people do need to sell, that there should be a way for it to come back. Okay, anybody else here with a question or a comment? And then I'll get to one more on the chat. Dr. Horowitz, you want to mention your question here?
I had something besides that too. It seems that it's not so much an omission that we're not sticking with the Torah study is the main thing and kind of wandering off to other things. It's commissioned. We're disgusted with it. We are repelled by it. Who wants to live like that?
Repelled by what?
Whatever, and and Hashem just gives us back what we're asking for.
Yeah.
It's not just we're neglecting; it's that we're openly showing
disdaining.
Our distaste. Distaste for it. Well, who wants to live like? Why do I have to give? Why can't why do I have to live this way? Why can't I be a little more showy or why do I have to sit all the time in base and medrash and I can be playing golf or going on a cruise or something?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. It's not just that people stop with studying, but they actually could, God forbid, gain a disdain for it. And I think you're right. And part of what happens is that it's a way of justifying what they know to be doing wrong. And part of it, I think, is also that when a person doesn't understand that in order to really be happy and fulfilled, the person needs to work and give, they instead treat obligations, instead of treating obligations as opportunities, they treat them as shackles and chains and restrictions rather than opportunities for self-growth.
just as obligations. Okay, I gotta take care of davening, and then I'll go about
Check the box.
and do
Check the
things.
box.
It's not like it's a change. It's okay. This is
Yeah.
what I do, and okay, I'll take care of that. I'll pay my taxes. I'll go to shul, and what else.
Yeah, that's correct.
And the other comment I made was that a lot of the society, for the society to function that way, not everybody had land in Eretz Yisrael.
Not everybody had agricultural land, but even the Leviim and the Kohanim, they had.
Well, there seemed to be a lot of Gerim also. Look at all our Tanaim and stuff who were descended from Gerim. Where'd they get their land from?
That's true.
The whole thing is, you got to be nice to them. Give them the lekach shekar, bring them home for Yantif and everything like that. And that was in the previous Parsha.
Yeah.
So without the legislation of taking care of everything else, how are you going to take care of yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So you need both. You got to take care of yourself. You got to connect with God. You got to take care of yourself. You got to make sure everybody. The rabbi mentioned what was it? Social capitalism. Well, a lot of the social capitalism involves getting everybody into the social.
Ring. A lot of programs. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Horowitz. Anyone else? Okay. Wishing you all a great day. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Rabbi?
Akiva, do you have a...
Yes, God willing, my father is saying a class. Thank you.
And what time?
10:30. Thank you. 10:30.
Akiva,
Thank you.